I'm joined by Emily Engel, who is the Assistant Ops Director and Video Coach at University of Wisconsin with the men's hockey team. So Emily, thanks for joining us today. Can you
thanks for having me.
Give us a bit of background? How did you end up in college hockey?
It's a bit of a long story, but the short version is that I went to school out in Colorado, and I played club hockey out there. So not at the NCAA level, more of I would say recreationally. So I grew up playing the sport. A coach there got involved with USA Hockey, and she asked me to be a video coach for a tournament back in 2013. And I had no idea what that meant. She just was like, oh, we need someone to do video. Do you want to go to Italy for 2 weeks? And, 23-year-old me was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So I kind of was exposed then to what a video coach does. And I was lucky enough to get a job at the University of Wisconsin. I actually started out with women's basketball, but I figured, that's a foot in the door. For those who aren't familiar with NCAA, Wisconsin is a huge athletic department in the country. It's one of, we call it in the Power 5 conferences. There's, I think, like 25 different sports. So it's a huge athletic department. I kind of figured, well, if I can at least get my foot in the door, maybe there'll be a chance that I can work with hockey. So I worked with women's basketball for a season, and luckily enough for me, the person who was with hockey at the time left after that year. And he recommended me to take his position. So I did an interview and moved over to hockey in 2015.
Now, is there a close fraternity of video coaches at Wisconsin? Like you all kind of share resources and share tips and tricks and things like that?
Absolutely. And that's one thing I've been really lucky with, is kind of that networking aspect. So without those other video coaches, I would have been lost when I first started there, because it is such a big department. There's so many different people to go to, whether it's someone in IT or someone in facilities when you need an extra table. And so we all try to help each other out. If there's something that we're working on that we think someone else might have a good idea for, we try to reach out. We actually had a 2-hour Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, just kind of talking about the new Huddle Sports Code, kind of where everyone was at with, the nature of COVID. So I would say we're pretty tight, and we're really lucky that way.
That's great. So I guess, in terms of, why we're speaking today, why do you think from your experience, coaching at the college level, and it gets 2 different sports, which is, that's a unique perspective as well. Why do you think such a powerful tool? Why is video such a powerful tool for young athletes?
I think a lot of young athletes are visual learners. That's kind of the nature of our world these days, is you're staring at a screen a lot, whether, you're watching a 60-second video on TikTok or you see something on Twitter. We're constantly consuming media. And I think it's just such a huge tool for kids, especially in their development. If they can see something, they can try and replicate it. Or if there's a concept that you're trying to teach them, visually, if they can see it, I think that when they're trying to do these things on their own, they can kind of reference back to that. And it's just a really powerful way to, I think, teach younger athletes especially.
Now, do you see, throughout the staff, so how many coaches are on the staff at Wisconsin?
So we have 3 coaches.
Yourself. So 3.
Right.
Three
yeah. So
2.
we have a head coach and 2 associate head coaches.
Okay. And then yourself.
Correct. Yep.
Right. So do you see, from their standpoint, like, is video a huge part of their workflow during the week?
Absolutely. And it's actually, my position is fairly unique to be mostly just a video coach. I'll be honest, I don't do a lot of the operations stuff. That was kind of just tacked on to my title. But pretty much only focusing on video is very unique in college hockey. A lot of the times you'll see a director of operations also does video, but that's not his main priority. And so I was really lucky when Tony Granato came in. He came from that NHL world where video is so big. And he really pushed to make me a full-time video person with his staff, because he saw how useful it is in teaching athletes. So we do a ton of video. We use NHL video for teaching. and a lot of other different concepts. So it's a huge part of kind of their coaching, day in and day out.
So walk us through your week. Like, what's it look like for you on a, let's say Monday's the week starts getting ready for Friday, Saturday game. What's a typical week look like for you?
So typically I would have our pre-scout done. For us, we look at a team's last 2 games. And that's usually what my Sunday is consisted of, is going through and marking those games. Nothing super in-depth, mostly, what kind of forecheck do they do? What kind of special teams are they running? Monday morning, I'll give that to the coaches, and they kind of go make their own edits from that. And so, one coach will really focus on penalty kill. One coach will focus on power play, and then kind of the general, like, here's the kind of forecheck they're going to run. This is what they like to do in the offensive zone. So each coach kind of makes their own edit from there.
Yeah. So the 2 games, 120 minutes. What do you get that down to present to them on Monday morning? How long is that reel of film?
Yeah, so I actually give them 2 full games, and then in sports code, everything's broken down. So they can really take whatever they want to take. They kind of whittle it down to maybe a couple minutes total. And we usually present pre-scout on Wednesday or Thursday to the players. So really giving them time to digest, see the opponent. There might be separate meetings from there, a separate power play meeting, a separate penalty kill meeting. So we try to really whittle it down. We don't want to overwhelm athletes because there's so much going on in their brain already. Yeah. But you want to just be able to kind of give them an idea of, this is how the other team plays. This is what they're going to look like. So I do give them 2 full games, and then they pretty much take whatever they want from it.
Okay. So back to the that's Monday, and
mm-hmm.
Where does it go from there for you?
I would say every week's a little different, to be honest. I do, like I said, we take a lot of NHL video. So I download a lot of games and try to get the data from that and clips from that I think that we can use. There's a lot of really great goals that are scored, and you can learn a lot just simply from that. So I'm looking at that a lot. We film a lot of our practices. So I'll film those during the week, and kind of anything that just comes up. I'm kind of the audio visual person and kind of IT person in general. So, finding different clips that we have TVs in our locker room. So if there's motivational stuff that I find, or, something cool on Twitter that I think will really motivate the guys, I'll try and find those and put them on the TV. So I'm constantly just kind of looking for different content to help our players.
Now, do you do, when you're talking with the players, are you meeting with players individually and going through things with them as well, and like creating playlists that they're going to digest? Is that how it kind of goes, individual meetings basically?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we have a lot of individual meetings during the season. It might be broken up more into forwards and defensemen. Okay. They have a lot of kind of those, or, different lines. Marco Siki will take defensive pairs after games and kind of just go through their shifts pretty quickly, not super in-depth, maybe 10 minutes or so. Yeah. Things that he thought they did well, areas he thought they could improve. And then same with the forwards. A lot of the time they'll go line by line and kind of go through their shifts. How did you feel? What did you see here? Maybe you can try this. And that's all the coaches. I'm actually technically not allowed to coach the players. There's a lot of NCAA rules regarding coaching. But I try to just make that easier for the coaches by breaking stuff down so they can pull it easier.
Okay. So we move to Friday, it's game day. And so what's game day look like for you?
So I'm pretty much at the rink all day. I'll go home for a little bit, but usually there's another team meeting in the morning. And kind of a quick, this is how we want to play. This is what you guys can expect. Pretty general, couple minutes, just a little bit of a refresher. And then we'll come back. There'll be a meeting about an hour and a half before puck drop, and that's usually special teams. So we'll take our penalty kill units, go in, look at the other team's power play. And then vice versa, we'll take our power play units, look at the other team's penalty kill. And then from there, I just set everything up, make sure everything's running properly, make sure the other team is good to go in terms of their video. They can see our feeds and everything. And then it's just waiting for that puck to drop.
And then game starts and you're working. And so what's a game look like for you?
So I actually work from our coach's locker room. We're really lucky that our arena is kind of like an NHL arena. A lot of our home games are televised, so I try to take that TV feed. That way we have the different angles, we can have the replays. So I'm working from our coach's locker room. I just have my laptop set up, sometimes another screen just to make things a little bigger. And then I call it tagging. I'm just tagging from there. I have a radio out to our bench in case, something funky happens. We are allowed to challenge goals. So I'm looking very closely at every goal to make sure there's not something that should be looked at. In between periods, I just put those files onto each coach's laptop, and then they look at what they want to look at. And usually it's something different. One coach wants to look at scoring chances, one coach wants to look at power play, and kind of just making sure they have everything that they need to look at in between periods, because it goes so fast. You guys know, you feel like you get in there, you're barely in there, you can barely talk to the players, and then you have to go back out.
Right. Okay, so in terms of the technical side of things, from our standpoint, trying to help our coaches, utilize video in a way that helps kind of the teaching and the learning of the game. So, what would you say, for video capture, from your standpoint, what's the most efficient way to kind of set up the video, and, from what vantage point, and where do you need to be, and things like some of the technical things that go into capturing the actual action of the game?
Sure. I think to start, just making sure things are simple. It doesn't need to be this huge operation. A lot of the time, just a camera right at center ice, even if it's, along a concourse or anything like that, or at the top of the bleachers. I think that center ice vantage point is the best. Kind of gives you a full view. You can go back and forth. The easiest, a lot of cameras now have an HDMI output. So making sure you have a cord that can go from the camera to your computer. It kind of depends on the software that you're using. And honestly, you can actually just capture the game straight to an SD card, put it on your laptop afterwards, and you could go straight out of iMovie,
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't have to be anything super complicated. There's always a way to do things no matter what resources or equipment that you have.
Okay. And I guess, I should have asked this earlier, but you mentioned you film practice. And so what are the things that you're doing with that practice film after you've utilized it during the week?
So we actually created a drill database. So we have practice footage from the last couple of years, and we'll take little bits of that, and we put it into a database, basically just to reference, if there's a drill we haven't done in a while, we can go back and see, okay, that was a one-on-one. Here's how it started. Here's how it progresses. And we also try to include NHL examples, like this is why we run this drill. This is what it looks like in a real game.
Yeah.
Or even some of our own clips. So really it's used for kind of that big database to be able to go back and reference. At the beginning of the year, we can show our newer players, okay, this is what this drill looks like. That way you minimize time at the board during practice. You can really utilize and maximize the time that you have the ice for.
Okay. And I guess from your experience, and again, when you're implementing, video analysis into what you're doing on a weekly basis, what would you say at its best, like what are the things that you feel that video give the players and the coaches, I guess the team in general? What are the elements that it adds to your performance?
I think, you can see things differently when you go back and watch a game from a coach's perspective and a player's perspective. As a coach, you might think like, oh, this guy really struggled. He didn't seem like he was skating well. Puck was, bouncing all over the place. And you might go back and realize that the player had some really good opportunities and had different scoring opportunities. So, you might see one thing or you see one play during the game and you think, oh, that guy's having a bad night. But you go back and you actually see that player really did some good things. And same thing as a player. And it can work the opposite way too. Like a player can think, man, I had a really good night. You know, I had a goal, I had an assist, but they might go back and see, you know what, I wasn't playing very well in the defensive zone, or I was turning the puck over a lot at the blue line. So I think it can change the way that you think about your performance.
Yeah.
And it could, like I said, it can go both ways. You can show a player like, you know what, you actually had a really good game. You did some really good things. Here's what they are. Or, you know, you can show your star player like, hey, yes, you're really skilled, but you need to work on something in the defensive zone. So it can just really kind of emphasize those teaching points.
Now, how do your players consume the video? So you've taken it all, you've tagged, as you said, you've done, you know, a ton of work in the background. How do you get it to the front lines to the players? I mean, the coaches, obviously, you're sharing it internally on your system, but how do the players consume it?
So our players are lucky that they each get an iPad when they come to school, and we utilize the Huddle app. So right after the game ends, I am uploading all of their shifts straight to Huddle. So their shifts, face-offs, kind of the general things. We don't want them to see everything that we mark because it's pretty specific, but a lot of the times they want to watch special teams and their shifts. So those are available pretty much right after the game ends. Sometimes, you know, if during the off season, I'll try and upload some NHL stuff as well, just to kind of keep them watching video, keep them thinking about hockey. But we really utilize that Huddle app.
Oh, that's great. So I guess, you know, you're running a session, a video session. What do you think are the key elements to make sure that the teaching and the learning are, you know, as efficient as possible in that, you know, in that setting? So they're not watching through the app, you know, they're with the coach doing a video session. What do you think are the key elements for making sure that that's a good experience?
I think making sure it's not too long. Attention span can be a little difficult. You know, especially like at the college level, you have school, you've got, you know, girlfriend, boyfriend, you've got family stuff, you know, so your head's kind of all over the place. Same for, you know, teenagers or high schoolers. Like there's so much consumption going on. So making sure they're shorter video sessions. And I would say try to pick a couple of key points. You don't need to run through 6 different things. Maybe it's, you know, forecheck. Maybe it's, you know, another scheme that you want to run. Just kind of trying to keep it simple and not inundating them too much, because, you know, if it's drinking through the fire hose, it's kind of just a waste of time. So making sure that a couple key points, keeping it short, and just making sure it's an environment where they can ask questions too. It's not an intimidating thing where it's me talking at you. It's us consuming it together, asking questions, and really trying to learn from it.
Right. Okay. Well, last one for you. You know, I take you and now you're the coach of a U14 team, and you want to make video part of what you do. How would you go about that? Like, what would be the things that you would focus in on as that U14 coach? So you got a younger age group than you have, similar to the team ages that we kind of have here. What are some of the things that you're going to make sure you do right away in terms of video?
I think making sure the players know this isn't like, I'm not trying to just critique you all the time. You know, you're not trying to pump their tires all the time, but you're also not, this isn't a bad thing to see yourself on video. So I think kind of being clear about why we're doing this. This is to help you get better. It's to help you see things a different way. I think that's probably first and foremost, most important, is just trying to make them understand that, like, this isn't a bad thing to be watching video. It's not a bad thing to see yourself on tape. And like I said, just keeping it simple. You don't need to be super specific at a U14 level. Just really trying to hone in on a couple of different things. You know, maybe the goal at the end of the year is, you know, X, Y, and Z. And so those are the 3 things that you're going to focus on. So just trying to kind of hammer home those points every time that you sit down and have that video session.
Well, that's great. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us. I mean, you know, you're on the front lines, not currently, but hopefully sooner than later. And your expertise and experience was welcome today. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.